Welcome to the Mystic Feminine Fertility Podcast, a sacred container for heart-centered conversations about fertility, pregnancy, menstrual cycles, and divine feminine energy. My name is Annalise Yagyajoti, and I'm a fertility awareness educator, a holistic reproductive health practitioner, and a modern mystic. It is my absolute joy and pleasure to host these conversations and share them with you. All right, y'all.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Mystic Feminine Fertility Podcast. Today I have Clara with me. Clara is a somatic trauma counselor, intimacy coach, initiated tantrika, and yoga teacher. She supports women to reconnect the wisdom of their body and womb as a way to build an unshakable connection with their feminine power and feel worthy to create deep, intimate love and nourishing relationships. Yes. I love that. Clara, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you.
Yeah.
And I love that little intro.
Right. It's nice to hear it and to have it reflected back, all the things that you've, done and that you continue to do and the ways that you show up in the world. It's beautiful. It's powerful.
Thank you. Thank you for witnessing it.
My great pleasure. Clara and I know each other back from India in 2019.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I remember us rolling on the floor and dancing.
sneaking into
our
the little
yoga
practice
teacher
room.
Yeah. That was great.
Static dance. Clara, where are you at in your menstrual cycle?
Yeah, so I'm on day 5 of my cycle. So I'm just getting off my bleed. And yeah, so the last days have been really gentle, nourishing, relaxing, getting in as much downtime as possible. And right now I'm feeling like I'm slowly getting out of winter and coming out into my spring. Yeah.
Beautiful. And on day 5, do you have any spotting or bleeding going on? Or do you feel like it's wrapping up?
I have a little bit of bleeding still going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Emerging into fall or a spring, ready to blossom and bloom like a flower coming out of winter. How is your relationship with your bleed, your period these days?
I would say it's coming back actually, because there has been a lot of change in my life in the last year. So I moved countries, I moved continents actually.
How you did?
And I had a lot of change and fluctuation. And my cycle tends to be quite sensitive to these changes. So there were a few cycles that have been a bit longer or shorter. And right now I'm getting into that space where everything is a bit more grounded, more predictable, more rooted. So yeah, the last cycle, I made a really clear intention to, like stick with my cycle and track it better and be in touch with it. And I definitely felt these ovulation vibes last cycle.
Yeah, it's
They
fascinating.
were going strong.
Oh, yeah. When the body is ready. It's fascinating how much moving countries, places, time zones really does have an impact on our cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Body
absolutely.
registers as stress, good or bad. It changes, it shifts.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, even if we don't perceive it as stress or if it's like positive stress, our body, it doesn't make the connection. It doesn't say, oh, this is good stress, so I'm going to give you a healthy cycle. It just feels like, stress. So we're going to reserve the energy for survival,
Exactly.
basically. Yeah.
If your body thinks you're running away from a bear, it's not trying to ovulate. It's not
Yeah.
trying.
No,
Your body's
not going to happen.
bear. So in
Yeah.
your case right now, the bear is Bali.
It is, yeah. And an airplane and
And an airplane.
moving my yeah, selling all of my stuff. Yeah. Yeah, but it feels good to come back into connection with yeah, with my cycle and my body and my womb, because that's also such an essential part of my work as well.
Mhm.
So, and I feel like the more connected I am to what I teach, the more embodied I am, the more potent
Mm,
I can show up as well with my clients. Yeah.
I love that. So
Mm.
what is, let's start at the basics. In your own
Mhm.
words, what is the womb?
The womb.
Yeah, the womb.
I love that you say start with the basics, because for me, this question goes so deep and it encompasses like so many layers. So let's see how deep we want to go, like
Yeah.
how philosophical we want to go. Um, so as I see it, like the womb is the space we have, and it's not just the physical space, but also the energetic space that we have in our lower belly. So usually that's for women, it's where our uterus and our fallopian tubes is, if we have them, but we don't need to have a physical womb or a uterus to be connected to that space. So, but if we look at it from like this very physical level, it's a hollow organ, right?
Yeah.
So it's an organ that is really receptive, and it's the space of creation. So it's, I mean, if we look at the uterus, literally, it's where all life begins, it's where creation begins. And for me, so there's different layers to this. So we have this physical layer, of the very physical layer of our womb, of our uterus, which we can take care, which we can nurture, which I know that you do so much and so beautifully in your work as well. And we have this energetic space where we can connect to our womb as this center of creation. And that doesn't necessarily have to involve like birthing human life. It can also be birthing, creating our projects, and like we have this ability to connect to that energetic space. And if we go even like another layer deeper, we also have this connection to our ancestors with the womb. So as women, our life actually started in the womb of our grandmothers, because our mothers were carrying already the eggs that then became us. And so I feel like there's a direct connection as females that we have to this female lineage, that is just, it's quite trippy if you think about it. Like our life kind of started in the womb of our grandmother, and the life of our grandmother started in the womb of her grandmother, and so on and so on. So it's like this connection that is weaving through us. Yeah. And then there's another level, which I feel like there's the collective level of, as women, we can tap into a space of connecting to the wombs of all females. So there's kind of like the collective womb as well that we all share and that we can tap all into. And I've said in ceremonies with plant medicine where I've been purging for the healing of the womb of friends and of women who I didn't even know. So um yeah, as I said, we can stay at this very physical level, or we can go really into this mystical space of exploring the womb as well, and this connection that connects all of us women, and that is this deep creation. And if we go even like another level deeper, we have like the cosmic womb as well. So in a lot of traditions, indigenous traditions, actually, the womb is it's seen as a portal. It's seen as a portal to the source, to God, to the divine. to creation, because it is the space where we create, and that the space that where the unmanifest becomes manifest and gets birthed into life. So it's the space between between human earthly life and cosmic life. And so what I try to do in my work when I work with the womb is I'm trying to weave all of these elements in, depending on what is needed, because in all of these elements we can have a connection or a disconnection. And I really like to bring connection of all of these elements, back into ourselves, back into our physical and energetic body.
I love that so much.
Mm.
Just hearing you talk about the different layers and the ways that we're deeply connected to our wombs individually, and then through the ancestors, and then to the collective and the cosmic. And it trips me out so much that thought of like, I existed as a primary oocyte, as a little cell in the womb of my mother when she was in the womb of my grandmother. So for a time, I existed in the body of my grandmother. And so if we think like the things that happened to my grandmother happened to me,
Mm.
the things that happened to my mother happened to me, the things that happened to me are happening to the future children that I may have.
Yeah.
This way that we're connected. And I love that you take it back. Like our grandmother was a little cell in her great grandmother and in her grandmother, and so on and so on. It really is a deeply connected field of study, inquiry, and mystical science.
Mm.
Where in your work, in your life, in your exploration, do you feel like you've seen people have the most disconnect from their body, from
Mm.
their home, from their ancestry?
Mm.
What blockages
Mm.
do you see show up for people?
Yeah. Oh, all kinds of blockages. But I feel like it's all connected. It all weaves in together. So usually it's not like, oh, I feel super disconnected from my ancestral line, but I'm so connected um to my physical womb.
Mhm.
Usually we're disconnected from this. So I feel like the space where we see it the most, of course, is in the physical. So that's where we can start the easiest, by looking like, how connected are we to our bleed? How is our cycle as well? Um, what are we experiencing also during intercourse? Like, do we feel we have a connection here? What does the womb even mean? Or are we just seeing our uterus as something that is maybe annoying, something that gives us pain once a month, something that is maybe it's functional because it's there to birth us babies? Or are we tapping into this field of what is there more to explore? And I feel like if we are learning to establish first this physical connection to our blood, to to the womb as a space of creation, of something that holds deep wisdom. If we tune in with it, it has this kind of like oracular quality. It's like an intuition that is so deep. It's so deep in our roots, in our instincts. And if we learn to tap into that, then naturally we will start connecting with these other layers, with the ancestral layer, with the cosmic layer, with the collective layer. But also I feel like, there is a lot of disconnect through generations of women, that we've been disconnected from our womb. So if our mothers weren't connected to their femininity, to their blood, to their womb space, if our grandmothers weren't, or if there has been trauma happening, then yes, of course, that influences us, because you also said it, like, what has happened to your mother, what has happened to your grandmother, this is carried down through us as well. So their strength there carried down through us, but just as much the wounds and the trauma that they couldn't resolve. It's stored in the tissues. It's stored in the tissues of our wombs. It's stored in the tissues of our body. It's stored in our nervous system.
Mhm.
So yeah, but starting with the physical layer, I think, is the most accessible and the kind of easiest way to start with that and making this connection. And then naturally the other layers will follow as well.
Mm. Yeah, I've seen that time and time again in my work, where people come to me and they're like, hey, I'm having really painful periods, or I'm having really irregular periods, or I just feel really disconnected from my body, from my fertility. I don't know how to interpret or translate what I'm seeing. And once we get that level down, once we're in the charting and we understand what's going on, they start to get
Mhm.
really curious about ancestral healing, about manifestation, about meditation, about metaphysics and cosmic science, and all of these deeper levels. So I definitely agree with you that the physical can be an entry point. And I often see, pain in the cycle, or irregularity in the cycle, or any sort of dis-ease as the body trying to get your attention. There's something in your body that needs to be noticed, acknowledged, maybe healed or released. But first, it's that level of acknowledgement and deepening.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I like how you said dis-ease. Yeah.
Yes.
And I always like to say that our body is always for us.
Yes.
It's so intelligent. It's always for us. Even if the symptoms we might face might be challenging for us at this moment to accept them, it's always for us. And there's a message behind it. There's a root behind it that is deeper.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful reframe from my body is hurting me, I don't understand, or I'm in pain, to like, my body is trying to communicate with me.
Mm.
Or the reframe that my body is always trying to support me in the best way it knows how. And if
Yeah.
you don't have a lot of communication with your body, if that hasn't been a skill that you've, developed, as most of us don't when we're young, because we're not taught to. We're taught to power through symptoms. We're taught to take, Advil and painkillers and drink a bunch of caffeine and keep going. But
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
learn how to tap into what your body's actually saying, you realize, oh, it's not actually, my body's not trying to hurt me. My body gets no benefit from hurting me. It's trying to get my attention. It's trying to tell me something.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So well said. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it's slowly changing the paradigm, but it's
We're out here
still,
changing it.
yeah, we're here changing it. But yeah, it makes me so often sad when, yeah, when women feel really disconnected to their bleed, to their cycle. Because
Mhm.
I always kind of like loved having my period, actually,
Always.
already from the beginning. I kind of loved it. And then I felt guilty for loving it because all of my friends were hating it in high school.
Mhm.
Um, and now I'm just like, wow, it makes me sad how, how women can be so disconnected from this communication, how lucky we are to have this monthly communication with our bodies, and our blood is showing us, where maybe we've been a bit too stressed, or we've been lacking nutrients, where we should slow down a little bit more. Or it's also showing us that everything is fine and healthy.
Mhm.
And yeah, how lucky are we to be able to tap into this wisdom
Mhm.
every month of our body? Yeah.
I love that you loved your cycle from the beginning. How old were you when you had your first bleed?
I think I was 12. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I think it was exactly 1 month after my 12th birthday.
Hmm.
And I remember my best friend in high school, or in middle school in Germany, we just have elementary school and then you go to school until you finish. So if I say high school, I guess it's middle school for America, that
Yeah.
age when you're 12. Anyways, my best friend, she already had her bleed, and I was jealous that she had her first bleed. And then I felt so happy to get it. I felt really happy. And there were cramps too, and that was not cool. That was not great. But yeah, I kind of loved it.
Hmm. What did you love about it?
Hmm, good question. I think actually what I did love was having this connection to myself and to, what made me a woman. And of course, there's so many things that make us a woman, and it's not necessarily our menstrual cycle, of course. But for me, that was like a monthly check-in always to be like, well, I'm a woman, and I I never wanted to be like a guy. I I always found it boring to, to just be kind of like the same every day.
Yeah.
And I think from a very early age on, I also realized that in different phases of my cycle, I feel differently. Because we learned about that in school as well. In biology class, we learned like, when you can get pregnant as a woman and what happens and with the hormones, like on a very basic level. We
Wait,
learned
they
that.
taught you that in public school?
Yeah.
That's Europe. That's great.
I mean, it's very basic.
Okay.
It's literally just like, okay, you're menstruating and then you have the follicular phase. I don't know if they call it like this, but then
Yeah.
you have ovulation. That's when you can get pregnant, you know. And then if you don't get pregnant when you're ovulating, then you have the luteal phase and then you bleed again. Basically, like that was it. Um, but I realized that I was feeling differently in different phases of my cycle.
Mhm.
Oh, and I'm remembering, they actually taught us about the mucus, and that you
Oh,
can, yeah, 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 yeah. And it was really funny because we had to do I'm remembering it all right now. We had to do presentations
uh-huh.
about that in school. I
Huh.
think we were like put into like different groups. Like one group was menstruation, one group was follicular, one was ovulation, one was luteal. And we had to do presentations about it. And I remember it was so funny. I found it so funny. Like we were 12, 13, like
Uh-huh.
early teenage years. So can be quite an awkward topic for teenagers, right? And we had a lot of guys in our class as well. And then like a group of guys had to do a presentation about ovulation and
All
about the
right.
mucus. And then this one guy, he like went up and he was like, well, I wanted to show you the cervical mucus when you're ovulating, but obviously I don't have one with me right now.
Yeah.
And then it was so smart. He just used glue to show us
Oh,
how stretchy it is. And I was like, wow, this is so genius. Like I don't know, he was so funny. And yeah, I really loved it because he took like the awkwardness out of the subject. Yeah.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Hmm.
All I remember learning in school was that I could get pregnant any day of my cycle and that, sex is dangerous and
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
can't trust your body, you can't trust any form of contraception. Always be on the guard. That's what I remember. I wish I had someone stretching glue at the front of the classroom. I had no
Hmm.
idea what cervical mucus was. until I started trying to prevent pregnancy, until with natural birth control with fertility awareness. It wasn't until I
Mhm.
was 22 that I knew what it was.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we learned about it, but then at the bottom line, it was also like, well, this is just the basics. This is not
Yeah.
so reliable. So girls just get on the pill and
Mhm.
end of story, you know.
Yeah.
We learned about like taking the temperature and
Oh,
stuff, but our teacher was like, it's not really reliable. And no one told us about fertility awareness and like,
huh.
actually charting and taking your temperature and checking the position
How to
of
make
your
it
cervix.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fascinating that you were introduced to it at an early age.
Hmm.
Like it sounds like I'm hearing you that you're like it wasn't the end all be all of mystical sciences and celebrating the female body, but it was, it was something
It was, yeah. Yeah, it definitely was
fun and
something.
engaging.
Hmm.
That's fascinating. And when do you feel like your curiosity about the womb deepened into a metaphysical inquiry, when you started to get curious
Mm.
about the spirituality of the womb?
Mm. I mean, honestly, this is a connection I'm still deepening. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm unraveling layer after layer after layer. And once you tap into it, it's like the universe. It's infinite. It's infinite depths. I think the first time I came into contact with this whole spiritual level of the womb was during my first yoga teacher training in Costa Rica. So I did that at a community there, which was wonderful because they were so in tune, living with the earth and following, like the red road shamanism. And so I've learned from my yoga teachers actually when we were working with our chakras, when we were working with the Swadhisthana, with the second chakra, so much about the spiritual side of the womb as well. And it just always fascinated me. Like it just pulled me. I felt a connection and I wanted to deepen that. And Um, then what really deepened that for me was sitting with plant medicine and having, yeah, having ceremonies where I was purging my own sexual past
Mhm.
from my womb, and I was purging wounds of sexuality from other women as well, from, yeah, as I said, from the collective feminine. And yeah, I just felt this is like, I'm not calling on this work, but this work is calling on me, and
Mhm.
I just got to follow it. And yeah, it's been beautiful and magical to know that there is something inside of me, or not even inside, there's just something I can connect to, um, that is even deeper than intuition, and that I can just call upon for wisdom and for guidance and to deepen this path to, yeah, to my own spirituality. And for me, the womb is really, it's very rooted, it's very connected to the earth as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, just lying with your belly face down into the earth is doing something. It's doing so much to me.
Mhm.
Yeah. Giving your blood back to the earth. That's, yeah, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to involve a lot of rituals or, woo woo and smudging and all of that. It's beautiful,
Mhm.
but really just seeing your blood, like getting it on your hands, giving it back to the earth,
Mm.
Lying face down with the earth, with your womb down, and just breathing into the earth is, yeah, just deepening that connection.
My 200-hour training in Costa Rica was also very transformative and deepening into the womb. But I'm not
Ah,
familiar with the term red road shamanism. I'm assuming it has to do with the menstrual cycle because of the red. Um,
um, no, actually not. It's a form of shamanic traditions that comes from the Native American, like some Native American tribes of North America.
okay.
So that's called the Red Road shamanism. Yeah.
And what practices from red road shamanism were incorporated into your yoga teacher training or into your introduction into the womb?
Um, well, first of all, we had plant medicine ceremonies during our teacher training,
Amazing.
which was not written in the curriculum, by the way.
He's like, welcome, welcome.
And I mean, like, um, full disclosure, like we did not have to participate. It was optional, and um, yeah, it was mainly a lot of there were a lot of ceremonies um that were facilitated that were not really from the yogic tradition and that connected, like creating altars for the earth and yeah, beautiful ceremonies to the earth, and where we're, taking, yeah, just going into different elements and making offerings for the elements. And yeah,
Mm.
that was very beautiful. And just the whole, um, so they weren't like, I couldn't name you like one
Yeah.
specific element, but the whole community is very built on like honoring these traditions and living in accordance with these traditions and deepening them. And just something that, like that you felt that they are so connected with the earth and honoring this path.
It sounds like, and from knowing you, your travels and your studies have given you a lot of different backgrounds from which to
Mm.
pull and to deepen the connection with the body. Your work is deeply sexual, sensual, and nervous system informed. It's deeply embodied and feminine, expressive and soft and open and fierce and all of these beautiful things. And I think, hearing you talk about your yoga teacher training and knowing our time in India and your breathwork
Mm.
training, I think it's such a gift, all of the modalities that you've been able to explore and incorporate into your work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Curious about the connection between the womb and the nervous system.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. So when we look at our nervous system, it's linked to the most primal part of our brain, to the reptilian brain, which actually uh, all animals possess that kind of brain.
Mhm.
And it's just there to secure us survival. So it doesn't care about how. It's just there to secure us survival. So if we are safe, if we are, feeling good, then our nervous system is regulated. It's in a parasympathetic state. But what the nervous system does, and it works through sensations in the body, it just scans our environment continuously for a potential danger.
Mhm.
And that could be, like a sound, it could be like a tiger, but it can also be like the stresses of everyday life. Yeah. And what the nervous system does then, it activates us into fight or flight. And if we cannot fully act out this response, then sometimes we go into a freeze state. So that's the most primal function of our nervous system, actually, is to secure survival by essentially by playing dead, by collapsing, by going into freeze. Yeah. And so we don't want to be there. But sometimes life happens and traumatic events happen, and our nervous system becomes dysregulated. So many of us we tend to be chronically stressed, and we tend to be chronically activated in fight, flight, or in like a functional freeze, where we can, we function in everyday life, we work, we talk, but like inside we're completely on edge all of the time. And so the nervous system, if we look into polyvagal theory, which was introduced by a guy called Stephen Porges, and he looked at like how the nervous system functions in our body, and he found that we have the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve, and it starts, right here where the brainstem starts, in the back of the neck. And he found out that the vagus nerve is responsible for around 80% of how regulated our nervous system are. So we can modulate our nervous system by learning to kind of like tune in with the vagus nerve. And so if you look at the vagus nerve, it runs like through our body, and it runs through many different organs, and it also touches the womb, it touches the uterus, and it touches the fallopian tubes. So there's a lot of like nerve endings there, and there's like a big connection to our vagus nerve. So if we are experiencing an event that has been traumatic, it will influence our womb as well. It will essentially influence us in that way, very physically, through the vagus nerve. And also, of course, like in other ways too, like it what you said, like, of course, when we're like having to prep to run away from a tiger, the last thing we do is bleed, or our body doesn't want to reproduce. And so we can learn to regulate and to attune our nervous system through many different practices, and by releasing trauma as well. And mainly that is by getting us from this very high activated states of freeze, of fight or flight, back down into regulation. And I like to work with that through somatic experiencing, which is a beautiful way of learning to communicate with what happens inside of your body on the level of sensations, emotions, what thoughts, beliefs are there. Because especially on the level of sensations, we have a direct influence on our nervous system, and we can modulate that. But there are also many different other beautiful practices we can use to regulate the nervous system by stimulating the vagus nerve, like breath work, like humming, and also, like physical work, like touching. So, and that also, encompasses our womb and our yonis, and the way we like get into contact with our sexuality, our sexual organs, like how are we touching our yoni. So there's so many different layers to that, how that influences the womb. Yeah. And especially for the female nervous system, I feel like it's beautiful to know that there is a connection to our womb space. And that we can heal our womb and that we can heal things like PMS as well, or irregular periods as well, by learning about the nervous system and by learning to regulate our nervous system.
I have been, the introduction of yoga was the introduction to the nervous system for me.
Mm.
And it's continued to deepen throughout my own practice, my own personal development, and just seeing the world around me, realizing how many of us are walking around with these completely dysregulated nervous systems where, yeah, there's like the fight, the flight, and then the freeze, which in polyvagal takes us back to the dorsal, like the reptilian, the brain stem. And it's like sometimes you've been so overstimulated for so long that everything in your body has to shut down, like you're playing
Mm.
possum, like you're preparing to die. And it's
Yeah.
this like deep exhaustion surrounded by subtle or not so subtle anxieties. And so learning both how your nervous system works, what impacts you, and then the skills to either down regulate or up regulate. Because if you're in dorsal, if you're in that freeze, you can't always relax your way out of it. It's not just, I need to sit in meditation. That's when you add in the more
Mhm.
active practices. You say, I'm going to go do some vinyasa yoga. I'm going to do some more intense breath work. I'm going to scream into a pillow. I'm going to dunk my head in a bowl of ice. Um, I'm going to go
Mhm.
sing a song at the top of my lungs, telling your body, your nervous system that it's actually safe to take up space, to move, that you're not actually in immediate peril.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
nervous system is fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you said something so important of like touching on the dorsal vagal as well, which is the freeze response. Yeah, and that we need to get active there. Like the way out of the freeze is through fight and flight.
Mm-hmm.
It's through activating our system as well. So I loved that you said all of these practices. And I also want to add like the layer of what I love to tell to my clients as well. Like it's never about like the practice.
Mm.
The practice is great and definitely do it. It gets you out of that state. But at one point, we have to look at behind like what got us into freeze in the first place. And, usually when we get into freeze, because it's the last resort for our body before we die, as you said, it's because we don't feel like there's the option to act out the fight or flight. Because like the healthy nervous system gets activated by something, it goes into fight flight, it acts that out, and then it gets deactivated and we get into the parasympathetic, into the ventral vagal branch again, where we feel calm, where we socialize, we feel grounded, we feel good. But if that's not an option to, for example, to get in touch with our anger, or to very physically, like maybe we want to run away from something and we can't because we have to sit quiet in school. If that is something that activated us, if there's a trauma connected to that, just as an example, what the body does is then it goes into this freeze state. And so eventually, after doing the practice, we also want to look at like what is behind that and what, maybe like what emotion am I not being in contact with right now? Like, and not just in the situation, but in life, like, is it hard for me to express my anger or my fear? And I feel especially with women, there's often this disconnect from our anger. And yeah, and again, it ties in so much into the womb, I feel. Because I know for myself that when I first started to connect to my womb, like my womb was so angry.
Mm.
It was raging feral woman, and there was just so much anger stored that I just never allowed myself to feel. And I was blocked here in the throat as well, because we have this beautiful connection between the uterus and the larynx. And as women, we're so often told to not like speak our truth, and to be kind, to be nice, to not speak up. But what it does inside of us, we're like bottling all of these anger, and and then it can be really liberating to come into contact with our emotions, whether that's anger, sadness, fear, and allowing ourselves to express it. That will give us the connection back to the body again, and to really, really become embodied. Because we can scream into a pillow, but like, how embodied are you when you do it? Are you doing it, like, what is your intention of screaming into the pillow as well? Are you like want to shake the anger off? Are you not want to be in contact with it? Are you want to just scream it out, or can you finally feel it inside of you, in your cells, in your womb, in your sensations?
Anger is such a transformative emotion, and I find that in my work as well, it's one of the harder ones for us as women to tap into and to fully feel. And often we don't really know what to do with it. So I love that you brought the levels of embodiment of like, hey, it's not that this anger is justified. Like, I don't even know what you're angry about, but I know that it's justified because there's been so much that has happened to us, and anger is such a normal, healthy human response in moderation, in healthy ways. But how can we work with that emotion when it comes up in a way that honors it, that isn't saying that it's wrong or bad, but it's still like, I'm feeling this, how can I move it in a way that is supportive to my body? How can I feel it and feel safe in feeling it? And I think that's probably a big reason why people come and work with you. You're such a safe space for them to explore these things and to give them tools, tips, practices, and reflection for them. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Anger, it's powerful. It's transformative. It's the element of fire.
Yeah.
You said you felt it in your womb. You had to move it. You had to feel, not even move it. You had to feel it. It was waiting until you were ready. So I'm just going to hang out here in this little oven of anger at this point.
Yeah, it is really transformative. Yeah. Yeah. And if we look at like the tantric view of life, for example, is that anger is full transformation there. It's in Tantra, we are alchemizing, we are transforming, we are changing these emotions that are hard for us, like grief, sadness, anger, guilt, shame. We're using them to be transformed through our Manipura chakra. Actually, in Tantra, it's like the portal of transformation. And so we can use all of these emotions, all of these traumas that are stored mainly like in the first two chakras as well, into more refined energy, into the heart, through the transformative power of our inner fire, of our Manipura, of our anger as well.
And for anyone that's listening that doesn't have background on chakras and the Sanskrit names, we've been talking about the first three chakras. So Manipura is the third chakra, right above the inches above the belly button and back. It's our sense of power, of digestion, so that makes sense that it's an area of transformation too. It's that fire solar element.
Yeah.
And then the first two chakras, the Muladhara and the Svadhisthana, or the root and the sacral, are centers of connection to the earth, to our safety, to our ancestors, and the second one being our connection to our sensuality and our emotions. And yeah, so much more. You can deepen so much into chakras, but I did want to add that for anyone that might be listening. And
Yeah, thank you so much for
yeah.
being so considerate.
and, and the first three, I mean, I see so often people really want to get into the upper chakras, like they want to get up into the ajna, the third eye, and the sahasrara, the crown. Like they're like, I just want to have visions and talk to God and do all these things. But really, the chakras can act as a ladder, and I think it's safer not only for the nervous system and the body, but for your spiritual evolution to start at the base, at the root, grow your tree. What's what we're talking about with nervous system regulation, with these practices, with even working with people, interacting with people. How can we get really steady in these sources of connection to the earth and our emotions and our power before we start to try to do anything above or outside of the body? Do you find, I want to talk about intimacy. I want to talk about sex. I want to talk about some juicy things. As I was talking about the chakras, like establishing that connection with the self,
Mm.
do you find for people who are wanting to have a really deep, expansive, orgasmic sex life, that it is important for them to develop intimacy and knowledge of their bodies first?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you basically gave yourself the answer already, because it all comes down to the connection we have with ourselves and our own bodies. Like, if we are disconnected from our own self, from our sensations, from our sexuality, our sensuality, and also from our pain, our difficult emotions, how are we supposed to feel pleasure then? Because pain and pleasure, you can't say like, I'm not gonna look at my pain, I don't want that, but I am gonna have a lot of pleasure and great orgasms. It's not how it works, unfortunately, because if we numb ourselves from one emotions, we're also going to numb ourselves from the pleasurable emotions. Yeah. So if we numb the pain, we numb the pleasure as well, because we just become numb and disconnected from the body. So yeah, if you want to have more pleasure, if you want to have amazing orgasms, a great sex life, start by connecting to your senses and start become curious about what is happening in the body. And I want to say, actually, especially the discomfort. Become intimate with your discomfort and look what is behind it. What are the emotions? What are the beliefs? What are the things that are behind that? Because that's gonna deepen your pleasure so much. Yeah. And on the other hand, pleasure like is so underrated as well in healing.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, because it's not just deep shadow work and all of that. Yeah, we don't want to close the door on our pain, but we don't just have to dig in there in the depth and the shadows all of the time and forget about the pleasure. We have to remind ourselves why we're doing this work is to come back into pleasure, actually, and to feel more pleasure. So yeah, I feel like it's almost really radical to learn to connect with our pleasure and to rest as well, to learn to really allow ourselves and our nervous systems to rest. It's radical in our culture, which is all about hustle and grind and not feeling. So it's radical to feel and to allow yourself to connect with your body through a deep, and it doesn't have to be sexual. It can be like a deep yoga practice, can be extremely pleasurable for your body. It can deeply open your heart. It can deeply connect you.
Yeah.
Or also just going for a self-pleasure practice and not rushing yourself and just slowly connecting, just connecting with your yoni, with the touch, and just even holding your yoni and breathing into her can give you so much connection and can be so healing and so pleasurable.
Yeah.
Mm.
Like what I'm hearing is let it be somewhat simple in the beginning. We
Mhm.
don't have to rush into these complicated or big or scary things at sometimes, but take steps
Mm.
to slow down, to rest, to breathe.
Yeah.
And I'm also hearing a movement in mindset towards curiosity about what's laying underneath this sensation, this pain, or even this pleasure. What's
Mm.
here? What does my body want me to know? And taking time, like that level of introspection and peeling back the layers, that takes time. That is a
Yeah.
practice. But I love, yeah, this, and just put your hands on your yoni and breathe. Like that for so many people, I know would even cause, discomfort. Like that's an edge to,
Yeah.
or to have our own bodies just for us.
Mm.
Like it's just time for us, and it can be as soft or as not soft or as slow or as not slow as we want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And
Or any other self intimacy practices that you
mm.
find yourself recommending for people who want
Mm.
to deepen that level of connection to the self?
Mm. Yeah, beautiful. I think in essence, you said it so well. It gets to be simple.
Mm-hmm.
It gets to be simple. It all comes down to, slowing it down, like taking your own rhythm, releasing the pressure you put upon yourself on how that is gonna look like or even feel like taking the pressure of having to have the most amazing orgasm
Mm-hmm.
and just learning to tune in with the body. So if we're in the head, we cannot really access the levels of pleasure that are available in every body. And just by allowing ourselves, like giving ourselves this permission to just become curious and explore, we can open so much already. And there's so many different practices again that people can do. But really, like the most simple one is to connect with your breath. Connect with your breath, and maybe if it feels good, then place a hand on your womb or place a hand on your heart, or if you feel like it, place a hand on your yoni and just notice how that feels and don't push anything. And then there's beautiful things like mirror work, like watching ourselves in the mirror, like standing in front of a mirror naked, or having a mirror to our yoni and just gazing into our own yoni, which can be incredibly intimate and incredibly deep. Mm. Yeah, just by releasing the pressure of us. And I had self-pleasure sessions where I didn't even touch my yoni, I didn't even touch my genitals.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really about the sensuality of physical touch and just feeling how my hands feel on my skin, how my breath feels,
Mm-hmm.
my sounds. So I always love to say, like, we have all of the healing tools inside of us, and these are not just healing tools. These are also pleasure tools. We have our breath, we have sound, we have touch, we have movement, and we have the awareness.
I love
Yeah.
the reminder that our sensuality and our sexuality exists outside of the vagina, yoni, vulva, womb area. Like our whole body is sensual and can be sexual. You can, yeah, really deepen into those sensations of touch, of breath,
Mm.
of sound, and letting your full body, all of your senses be involved. Like that is embodiment. And that takes so much presence to be aware of all of your senses, all of your body opening in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And, if we really break it down, like sexual energy is life force energy.
Mm-hmm.
That's creation energy.
Mm-hmm.
So that is not just in sexual intercourse or in sexual self-pleasure, but that's in like everything we do. Can we like infuse it with life force energy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's also like a really big part of my work, that bringing the stigma away from like sexual energy being focused on your sexual organs and bringing it into like into our whole body, into our whole life. Yeah, and living that life with this creative, vital, Shakti sexual energy. Yeah.
It warms my heart, my womb, my toes and my fingers, my whole body,
Mm.
just to know that, you're out here doing this work and creating this offering in it. Like, I really do think that we're shifting consciousness. Like, we're out here providing spaces, tools, and practices to help women get into their bodies. And the more we are in our bodies, the more that we can live and expand from that space. I think that what you do is incredibly potent, powerful, and amazing. The world definitely needs your work.
Mm.
Before we start to shift into where people can find you and what you're offering, is there anything else that you want to say or share here in this space?
Mm. Thank you for asking. And first, I just want to say, likewise, my dear, like about your work. I'm so glad you're doing this. I'm so glad you are changing women's bodies and menstrual cycles. And I honor you so much for that. Um, yeah, and let me check in if there's anything else that feels important to say right now that I want to give your listeners. Mm. Yeah, it feels really complete, and yeah, just want to encourage everyone listening to. And I don't know if you also have male-bodied listeners, because we've been talking a lot about the womb, but everything we've been talking about, embodiment and sensuality and sexuality, is just as valid for men as well, to for them to connect to that energy
Mhm.
in a different way. So yeah, I just hope every person out there listening feels inspired to start making this connection to their bodies, to their root, to their womb, and their sensuality and sexual energy in a way that feels nourishing to them.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful. And where can people find you? Where can they find more information? Where are you at?
Mhm. Yeah, so I am mainly on Instagram.
Right?
So you can find me there. My username is just my first and last name. It's Clara, Clara, Malzer, Malzer. I also have a website. It's also just my name, so claramalzer.com. And yeah, that's mainly where I'm at. I have a newsletter, I have a Telegram community as well. Yeah.
And what are you currently offering if someone wanted to get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So I'm currently offering one-on-one mentorship and coaching in the realms of healing trauma and regulating the nervous system, and especially for female bodies, working on the topics of sensuality and sexuality as well, getting in touch with your womb, with your intuition, with the medicine that is residing inside of you. And I also love to work on topic anything that has to do with attachment and relating. That's my juice as well. So yeah, if that's interesting for you, you can definitely get in touch with me. And I'm launching a new course, which is as we're recording this, it's kind of like still secret. I haven't gone out to the public with it. But yeah, so I have a new course coming up. It's called Awakening Her. And it is a 9 or 10 week group journey that brings together basically everything we talked about today. So we go really deep into nervous system healing, especially for female bodies, connecting with our womb, healing trauma, whether it's sexual nature or other trauma, because yeah, it can all manifest in different parts of the body. And yeah, we're also opening up through this work with the womb and the nervous system. We're opening up to more pleasure inside of our bodies and connecting to our sensuality, sexuality, and yeah, just in this way, as I said today, and in a way that expands into all areas of your life. So whether that is in the form of relating and intimacy with yourself or another human, or whether that's about birthing your creative magic into the world. Yeah.
Well, that sounds
So
like a potent offering.
yeah. Yes. So we're gonna start in June with the course, and yeah, I'm gonna open the enrollment soon. Yes.
Well, I cannot recommend Clara enough as a human, as a practitioner. She is so open, kind, warm, non-judgmental, and grounded. And if you're interested in checking her out, I cannot recommend it enough. Thank you so much for taking the time, for managing time zones and having this conversation with me, Clara.
Thank you for having me, love. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you enjoyed it, it would mean the absolute world to me if you'd share it with someone else that you think would like it, or leave a review. You can learn more about our guest by reading the notes below. And if you want to learn more about me, my one-on-one coaching, my memberships, or my online courses, you can learn more at mysticfemininefertility.com or Mystic Feminine Fertility on TikTok and Instagram. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.